Hello, everybody. Welcome into another ZBrush stream. My name is Ian Robinson, and I am guested with Marcus Whinney. Welcome in, Marcus. How are you doing?
Hi guys, thank you. Yeah, not bad, thanks.
Nice.
Whew.
So some of you may not know, we always, not every Tuesday, every other Tuesday, we do a ZBrush stream where we try to bring on an artist and talk about their processes and pipelines. Sometimes we do a image breakdown, sometimes we do an industry spotlight, and today it's an industry spotlight because Marcus here, he does book covers using ZBrush, which is super phenomenal, but he also does tutorials and stuff on YouTube. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of take a quick peek at his work here. And I'm going to share his stuff if you don't know who he is. But his work is just super phenomenal. So, Marcus, thank you for coming on here. Let me just share real quick all of your links. But more specifically today, Marcus, we're going to be he's going to be talking about this book here, The Hunter of the Gods, and this amazing breakdown. So without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and hand it to you. Marcus, introduce yourself. Tell us who you are. And
so thank you for having me here. My name is Marcus Whinney. I am a character artist, creature artist. I have worked in the industry now for roughly 10 years, coming on to 10 years. I'm currently working in DNEG, which is a film studio. I also do side pieces, freelance work, and also I have recently created a YouTube channel where I try to inspire people to get into ZBrush and just share my workflow with them as much as possible, making various creatures and hard surface models and stuff like that. I have plenty of tutorials on YouTube. If you follow the link, you can find them. And my journey started in 2013, where I just came out of university in 2012, and I had a couple of freelance gigs here and there after university, and it was very small pickings. Like, sometimes people would pay you, sometimes they wouldn't pay you, stuff like that. All the stuff that people get scared of once they come out of university. But my first gig was as a casual runner at Framestore. And I thought this was the big gig that I had, was going to have. Unfortunately, it wasn't. It was a 2-month gig, and then I was let loose. But I was actually grateful because I got in contact with one of my tutors from university, and he gave me a job at Tandem Films, which was a small animation studio inside of London.
Nice.
And they had the Bing Bunny TV series, which was a 3D series, and that was my first gig as a character coordinator in 3D for cameras and stuff like that. So I moved the cameras, and then they would draw it out in 2D for animations and stuff like that. So that was my very first ever job in the industry, fully as an artist.
Nice.
After that, then I took a couple of more. Because I was an animator. I did animation when I was at university, and I found that animation wasn't my thing. I didn't want to spend so much time, learning the animation side of things. I wanted to be creative in the art side of things instead. So I decided after Tandem Film, I wanted to become a character artist, creature artist, and I took a couple of years off. About two years, working as a gym instructor at the local gym, and in the spare time working with ZBrush, like just constantly, like 8 hours a day if I could do it, just absolutely bashing it out, trying to get my head around ZBrush, because the first time you use ZBrush, it's not like Maya or the other packages. And back then, it definitely wasn't like any other package. It was sort of really like its own animal. So you have to learn how to use ZBrush, this interface and all that sort of thing, which is very daunting on first-time users, obviously. But then after that, I got a games studio contact me. They were a Good Game Studio, which was in Hamburg, and that was my first game gig that I had, and it was very much League of Legends type things. I think in my art station at the very bottom of my portfolio there is a page with Good Game Studios and what we did there, or what I did there in the time that I was there with Good Game Studios. After that, I moved on to Sumo Digital up north in Nottingham. This is in England. The first one, well, Hamburg, then came back Nottingham. Stayed there for a short period of time, 5 months. And there's a reason for that, because I always wanted to work in film. That was where I felt like I belonged, and I wanted to create creatures, because I watched. Everybody does this, I'm sure. You watch a film, you fall in love with the film, and then you want to know exactly how they created those things in the film. And my great passion was the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogies, and they really inspired me to create creatures and to get into the realms of fantasy and stuff like that. So at Sumo, whilst I was working at Sumo Digital, I got a phone call from MPC Studios, which is in London, which was a film studio, and they asked me if I wanted to become a texture artist for creature department. So I said yes, and after 5 months, I went all the way down to London. I was like, "Sorry, I've got to go. My quest is leading me elsewhere." So I took the adventure and I went to MPC, and bearing in mind, I was renting a full-on flat and everything. I just packed up and I just went, because you only get these chances once in a while, and you got to take them. If you're in this game, you have to just jump on board. So I went there. Yeah, went there. MPC, became a texture artist there, working in Mari. Met a very dear friend, Simon Green. I think he's in the chat. I think I saw his chat in there somewhere.
Say hi, Simon, if you're in.
Yeah. Me and him, we got to know each other, and he helped me later on get a job at DNEG, which I'm currently at the moment, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So I stayed at MPC for a year and 1 month, and then I moved on to a senior character artist at Avalanche Studios, which was in Sweden. So that's moving again, country again, where I worked on the Extinction game. I can't remember what it was called. It was a dinosaur game, but it was like they were futuristic dinosaur game, and you were like 4 hunters, and you had to go in and kill all dinosaurs and stuff like that. It was very, very creepy creatures. It was really cool. But again, 7 months. I stayed there for 7 months in Sweden. Then I came back to England, became a senior character artist at Dreams, which is a virtual reality gaming studio. Very well known in Farnborough. Very cool game. I got to work on a VR version of Far Cry 3, where I got to. We were given the assets from Far Cry 3, the Vass character, the old boss, the one that everyone knows well. And we were asked to up-res them and create higher resolution characters of the original game, which is really, really interesting. And then I stayed there for 2 years. Then the pandemic hit. Obviously, everything went skew. So that was the time when Simon Green called me up, said, "Do you want to come work at DNEG?" Because he got a place, and then they asked him, "Do you know anybody who could be a good artist here?" And he said me. So I owe a lot to Simon Green for doing that. So yes, I'm now a build TD for a year at DNEG, and that incorporates a lot. It's not just creatures and characters, it's everything. I'm basically a generalist working at DNEG at the moment. So I did a lot of things on what was that film called? 1 second.
The Adam Project?
Yes, the Adam Project.
Yeah.
Really cool film. Got to work on the massive spaceship that they flew. I got to make the damaged sections on the spaceship, so on the wings and all those sort of things. I got to create the inner structure of the spaceship, because when they got it, they didn't actually know what the inside of the skeletal structure of that plane would be like. So I had free range to create whatever I wanted, and it was it was a very short period that they needed the product done. So there was no concept. So you just got in there, they gave you a bunch of things, and you just, kit bashed. So that was
I'm
the
jealous, by the
plan.
way. Real quick, I'm gonna interrupt. Jealous. I love this movie. This movie's awesome. I'm a Ryan Reynolds fan. Most people know that by me. So this was an awesome movie. So it's cool to see that you had work on this. This is awesome.
Yeah, and so I went from the spaceship of that film, and then they had a canyon run scene where they were flying through the canyon, and I was part of a build team that sculpted the rocks of the canyon run, which was a very big hero shot in the film. So yeah, that was quite good to have on the CV.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, using ZBrush obviously, because there's no other way you could make that otherwise. I mean, you could use Houdini, which we do use a lot to create environments and stuff like that. But if you want to get that hero shot, you need to go in there and sculpt by hand, and that's what's brought me to today. So I've been working at DNEG now for a year and enjoying it, and as well as doing every week nearly for the last year, a new sculpt, a new time lapse, something to inspire people, something to add to the history books of YouTube. So there's an artist out there once that was called Marcus, and he made all these time-lapse videos. I don't want to not show my potential, and no one would ever see it. So that's why I decided to make the YouTube channel. It was a long time coming to make it, and I just wanted to make it so that people could get inspired to use ZBrush in the way that's different to how people normally use it.
No, absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. So we're going to go ahead and get your ZBrush up on the stream here. But as always, too, if anyone in the chat has any questions for Marcus about his pipeline or anything he's showing, go ahead and let those comments and questions fly in. I'm going to go ahead and copy them, and then I will throw them to Marcus as quickly as humanly possible. So you're starting off with the Hunger of the Gods book.
Yes.
I love the sculpt, man. This was really cool. I haven't done a lot of animal sculpts myself, but this one is super unique because it tells a story already with what's going on, and it's like I want to know more. So
so I was approached from little I think it was Little Brown Bag Books, or little Brown Books, the company. After doing, like I said, the YouTube thing and ArtStation, if you really want to get known, get an ArtStation account if you're an artist. It doesn't matter if your work's half done or if it's completely done. Just as long as you've got a portfolio of work that can show people to get interested in your work, then it's definitely worth it. But anyway, I was approached by a publishing company who liked my dragons. This is the second book that I'm showing you right now. The first one was a dragon, and they saw the dragon work that I did on my ArtStation. I will show you the dragon, but I'll have to explain to you why it looks like it does in a minute. But yes, it's very specific in the way it has to look for the cover, obviously. They asked me to create, if I wanted to work on a book for a gentleman called John Gwynne, who's a pretty... is a well-known author. He does a lot of Viking mythology type books and stuff like that. In fact, just give me 1 second. I think I've got... Here we are. I don't know if anyone can see that.
I will make you full screen. There you go.
Yeah, so it's a full wraparound cover, and this is a special edition version of it. There's only 300 of these ones made with the different color spine or pages, sorry, and it's a hardback as well. So I mean, he gave me that for free once I did it for him, so that was really cool. Yeah, he's a really nice guy. He knows a heck of a lot about fantasy and Vikings and battles and stuff like that. His books are really good. You should really check it out. He asked me if I could, design his covers for him, because his other covers from his other books, I've got one here, sorry. This one, Malice, was a good cover. Don't get me wrong, it's a very nice cover, but he wanted to show something more fantasy. He wanted mythological creatures. He wanted a dragon, a huge dragon that's sort of popped off the page, and people would go in awe about it. So I was like, okay, that's a lot to ask. Let me do some sketches and see what happens. So what I'll do.
That makes sense too, though. Real quick, I mean, that makes sense because it's like, I don't know about you, but like, you know, I don't have a whole lot of time to read. So if a book cover is super captivating and it's just like flying off that bookshelf and into my arms, I mean, it's like, then that's going to be the enticing. So that makes total sense. He's like, I need something just a little bit more with that artistry pizzazz. And so that's a really cool ask. You know, I know it's not always easy, but it's like, yeah, all right, I see what you're saying.
So yeah, I'll show you the process I did for that book first off.
Nice.
So if I just pop this open, this is pure ref, and I use this a lot, especially when working with freelance jobs and stuff like that. It's a great way of collecting references and building up a library of references and images and stuff like that. So yeah, the first thing I thought was, okay, it's got to have a bleeding great dragon on it, right? Because he wants a big dragon, and he said it was a very specific sort of style he wanted as well. He wanted something that looked like the Harry Potter dragon from the dungeons of the was it the bank?
Mm-hmm.
This one, yeah. So he wanted something that looked gnarly and looked like it was dead and beaten and skeletal and stuff like that. So I used that as the first point of reference, and then I just went online and just grabbed as many images as possible. A lot of them, like this one here, apart from the lady, obviously. A lot of them were sort of. I was trying to get like evil images. Like I wanted to make sure that I had really a variety of images and stuff like that. And I even got some stuff from The Hobbit here as well. These were like original concepts from The Hobbit for Smaug that they used, and they decided they weren't going to use them because he looked a bit too old and grotesque. So they decided not to use those ones. But yeah, so like I said, I collected a whole lot of images, and then I started doing thumbnails. I'll try and get through as fast as I can. So I do a whole load of thumbnails. This is a great way to get something to a client as fast as possible, just showing them, you know, basics of what you want, what you're imagining and stuff. I know people are going to probably say it in the chat, but the front and back are in the wrong place, so you just have to imagine that they are flipped. So the front is on the right and the back is on the left. So I showed him all these, and he decided to go for number 3, which was this one.
Nice.
He liked the idea of this huge head of a dragon coming down to a very small little human on the side. So I thought, great, that's brilliant. I don't have to do much sculpting. But then I decided I'm gonna first of all try and paint it, right? Because I wanted to see if I could try and paint it in Photoshop, just to give him another version of it. And they decided to go with the bottom one here. It was originally called In the Shadow of the Gods, but they changed it later. So they liked the layout of this. It was also to get because it's going full wraparound, and full wraparounds are very difficult to do because you have to make sure that it's interesting all the way around. But the most interesting thing is on the front page. So it was difficult, but I eventually started to plot out a dragon. If we come over here, you can see that was like the first one that I did. And then eventually it went through iteration after iteration after iteration, getting bigger and bigger, and the human was getting smaller and smaller. And then they were like, we need more drool, we need more fire, we need more evilness in his eyes and stuff like that. And it went on and on for weeks, and we eventually came to something like that. So that was the first book of The Shadow of the Gods for John Gwynne.
Wow.
And it got quite a big response from online. They loved it. So
Nice.
About a year later, because this guy, John Gwynne, he writes books quick. So a year later, he asked me, can you do the Bloodsworn Saga for me? Like the whole saga. It's like 3 books. I've still got to do number 3 later. I'm hoping I'm going to do number 3 later. But yeah. So he asked me, can you do number 2 for me? And I was like, sure, what does that one have? And he was like, oh, I want a massive wolf. I want Fenrir, the wolf. And I was like, okay.
Deep breath.
Let me get my thinking cap back on. So I did again. Went through the same thing. Collected images, collected references, as many wolf images as possible.
Mhm.
I added my one as well, the Shadow of the Gods, as a point of narrowing the image down, because you don't want to create something that's going to be different to the previous one. You want to make it in the same universe, especially like the covers. Everyone who's a collector likes to have things that are continuous, not changed completely or different in any way. Massively
Mhm.
different anyway. So yeah, we went through the same process. Thumbnail sketch first. The bottom one was what they chose. I had this idea of this wolf walking out of the shadows of a wooded area. Apparently, this wolf was slightly smaller than the dragon,
Oh,
or
okay.
about half the size of the dragon, and the dragon's huge. I mean, the human is like, tiny compared to him. So I was like, okay, I will try and find like Fenrir. I mean, we got the Hulk from Thor Ragnarok. You got that big Fenrir wolf, so I used that somewhere in some places, and then I had to make it up as well, because a lot of it was not in reality. It was a fantasy. So you have a wolf, but then you have to make that wolf look gnarly. You have to make him look like it doesn't belong, sort of thing. And I mean, I got references like this one, which is just completely crazy. It's got like two heads joined together and stuff like that. And I just tried to make it as less of a wolf, but keep the wolf aesthetic as much as possible. And so I, carried on. I started to block it out in Photoshop. I blocked out the woods and the cover and the shape of the size of the cover. Then I used a Z tool inside of ZBrush, because a lot of people would say I was cheating because I was using a Z tool in ZBrush, but I say if it speeds your process up and it helps you, it's not cheating. It's just a quicker way of getting to the final point. I mean, when you look at a character on the films or in games and stuff, most of them are base models. They have base
Yeah.
models that they use to create them, so it's not really cheating. It's good to practice. Don't get me wrong. It's good practice to do a wolf from scratch, but it's not essential.
Yeah, it's not practical, especially like when you're up against deadlines and stuff like that. I come from toys. I've worked with a few toy companies, and they were always like, "Here are our base meshes. Use all this," because time is money, and they need the product quickly and stuff
Exactly.
like that. But like you
And
said, it's good practice to start from a sphere when you're learning, because then you can get all those proportions and volumes and stuff memorized. But at the end of the day, when it comes for client work, if you can start from a mesh. It's not cheating, you're modifying it.
Exactly. So I used a wolf from ZTool just to block out the pose and also save the viewpoint, so I could go back to it and use it as reference later. So they chose, I can't remember which one of these they chose. I think it was the middle one, but with a different head. Anyway, then I started to paint over it, just basic painting skills inside Photoshop again, just to give them another, because I find clients, they can't quite imagine it, because you can imagine it in your head and you can see what it would look like, but sometimes people need that little bit extra just to know what's going on, how it's going to look. So I give them a basic look of how the book cover will work, and then I go in. They said the wolf needs to be bigger, the woods are too small, too large. So I started to collect references of tree lines and stuff, and then I added the tree lines in, kept the wolf the same shape, made the people a little bit smaller, and then they were happy with that. So I started to incorporate sculpting inside ZBrush to make the wolf. And again, huge long process of sculpting the wolf, getting that base shape down, getting it looking more I don't know how to say this, fantasy-like, not too much like a wolf, because at the beginning it looked like it looked good, but it was too much of a ratty face. And this was like near 90% of the way done. They decided, can we change the face, please? And I was like, oh, okay. It takes a lot of time to change things. I was like, oh, you know what? I'll just do it. So eventually, it came out to this front cover. and they liked it. So that was the second book. And now if I go back into ZBrush, I can show you the actual models.
Cool. We do have a couple questions that came in, which are pretty cool. The first one is, are all the proportions were rendered in, or those propositions, sorry, were all those propositions that you were showing earlier, were those all rendered in an engine, or were those just like quick Photoshop sketches that you were using to showcase?
1 second, I'll get that back up. So are we talking these ones?
Yeah.
Or, yeah, I mean, this is all rendered in ZBrush. All the creatures rendered in ZBrush. Photoshop was just the background images and small human characters, but everything was rendered using ZBrush. I didn't use a third-party plugin or a third-party program to make these. So yeah, it's just ZBrush and Photoshop. And then if we go in here, you can see the wolf is actually the better of the two creatures, because it was going to be seen fully on the page, rather than the dragon was going to be seen only half, well, sort of half sort of thing. So this is actually quite a good model, I would say. There's some stretching going on at the back here, but that's because the neck is stretched around. And when you do a book cover, you're not using perspective. You're using it as a flat image. So when you see it in perspective, it looks weird. But once you hit the perspective off, you can tell that it's made for a book cover sort of thing, because it looks flatter. So yeah, that is the wolf. And the dragon.
Cool. Well, that's loading too. We had a render question come in, but I'm just going to note that we're going to cover some render techniques and stuff like that more towards the end of the stream. So hang about, because we're definitely going to cover some of that. So stay tuned with that. But I've noted your question down, so we'll have some render stuff happening.
Cool. So yeah, this is the dragon, and to fit him on page and to get exactly what the client wanted, I had to mess it up a bit. It was a full sculpt, which I did create a full dragon sculpt, but when it came to actually making it for the book cover, they just wanted the back wing like pushed further back every time I showed them an image, and that meant that the the overall design of the dragon got a bit messed up. So the dragon's arm on the right hand side, or the left hand side, sorry, is messed up. And for book covers, there's certain things you don't need to sculpt. There's certain things, whatever you see, because it's not going to be something you rotate around in a turntable, will be it. So you don't have to worry about sculpting every little detail. Like, I mean, if you look at the back here, it's got like a very basic shapes for the back, because it'll never be seen because the wing will be in the way. So yeah, this is the dragon sculpt, and yeah, it's messy, but it worked. It did what it needed to do for the book cover. And sometimes you just can't be precious with your work, unfortunately. So yeah, that was the Shadow of the God and the Hunger of the God. Was there anything you want me to show, or anybody wanted me to show anything to do with the book cover stuff as well?
Well, we definitely got some great questions coming in, so thank you guys for all these questions. One of the questions that we got here, as I'm scrolling through, does fiber mesh add extreme geometry to taking poly count very high? Do you use fiber mesh?
No. This is a brush that I bought online on ArtStation.
Very nice.
By another artist. I can't remember the artist's name, sorry, but he made a VDM brush of hair clumps. And what I do then is I sculpt using those, and because it's a 2D image and never going to rotate around it, if I just go back into here, I then take a very fine brush inside of Photoshop and I start to just paint in for just to make it give it the final touches, basically. And then, yeah, that's how I would paint for if I was to do it as a Photoshop picture or a concept picture. I'm not going to sit there and worry about fiber mesh inside ZBrush. I tried it. I think I tried it when it first came out, and it just boggled my mind.
I'm honestly like, the best thing to remember with fiber mesh is that it's there's a light box that you can pull from, get some presets. A lot of those
Mm.
presets have textures, so I just turn those textures off. And then as you're adjusting the sliders, the thing I focus on is that gravity takes place. So I turn the gravity off just to get an idea, and then I just adjust the sliders until I find something I like. Because there's so many little things going on, we can spend a whole lesson just on fiber mesh.
Yeah.
Best thing to do is I just turn the gravity to 0, and then I just start messing with the sliders and figuring out thickness and if it works and stuff. And then I apply gravity from there. And then as you're rotating, and this is what it does kind of get some people when you're rotating with fiber mesh, if the gravity's turned on and then you tilt the model, the gravity's always going on the y-axis. So when you tilt the model, you tilt the viewport, it's going to try to follow that. So just I always turn it off, play with it, and then try to reset. So for those interested in fiber mesh, the book cover, we had quite a few questions about like the imagery of the background, the trees, the mountains. Did you use stock photos? Did you paint that? Was it a combination of both?
I think it was a little bit of combination of both. A lot of it will be photo bashing because it's quick. I have got brushes like these tree line. The tree line at the top here is a brush that I have as a download. I downloaded from a gentleman who created a bunch of brushes for concept artists. I think his name is Imrad, Imrad something. I'll find it and I'll pass it to you so you can send a link to them. It's a free brush set as well, so I mean it's great. But it's got loads of stuff. It's got rocks, it's got trees, it's got birds, it's got flowers, grass, mountains and stuff, and clouds. It's got everything you need for a special effects bonanza when you're creating your artwork. So yes, a lot of them is stock images. I mean, if you go to my YouTube channel, you can actually see me doing a little bit of this in a time-lapse video that I created for the Hunger of the Gods. So you can see how the background came into being and stuff like that. But yeah, it's stock photos with Photoshop, and the only thing that's ZBrush related is the creature, because I wanted to focus the eyes on the creature and wanted people to see when they see it, they're like, wow. So a lot of the rest of the stuff is just background noise in my case, in this case, sorry. So yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
No, it looks amazing too. We're getting a lot of questions about your render process, because you show it so awesome in your time lapses and stuff like that. But I had a question for you before we get into that, because we talked about doing render stuff afterwards. So for everybody who's joining, it's like, Marcus, give me your render tips. Great. We're going to cover that really soon. We promise. We promise. We promise. We had a lot of chat about that, but we thought it'd be kind of cool if you would showcase too, like, how do you approach like a bust or one of these sculpts, for a book cover?
Yeah, sure. So I just got a bust here, a Z tool. I don't know if people have seen my YouTube channel. I use a lot of Z tools. I'll use a theme. I'll use a anatomy, and I'll use like this bust to start off with. First thing I do is make sure that geometry is set to Dynamesh, but it's set to a very low resolution. You don't want to work on very high resolution stuff. It becomes too much polygon. You use a polygon, it becomes messy, basically. So my first brush that I always use will be the clay buildup brush, and I just go in and I start to. Got my Z brushes. So I just start blocking in things and using the add and subtract of the clay buildup brush. I will then, and also the move brush is very important. I'll just start playing around with shapes. Sometimes I don't even know what I'm sculpting until I've got myself halfway through. Yeah. And even then, it's like I'll get to that point, and then something completely different will change the outcome of the model. But it is good to have references. I think this. Hold on one second. Let me try this again. Yeah, I don't think the pressure's working on my tablet. But essentially, I would just start to
You said your pressure sensitivity isn't working?
Yeah, I think I have to turn it off and turn it back on.
Go up to preferences real quick and go under tablet. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it looks like it just got disconnected. What tablet do you use?
I use a Wacom 24 Cintiq.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I think when I pulled the plug out, it must have messed with it. But it's all right because I mean, I work from home, so at DNEG they have a pressure sensitivity problem with the ZBrush as well because we work from home in a VPN. So it's just like, oh, okay.
Sometimes if you with Wacom specifically, if you go and there's a process to just restart the service in the background, that usually fixes the problem. But sometimes it requires a restart of the computer, so we're kind of streaming.
Yeah.
So I can show you some of that stuff when we're done.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so I would, just start to block out shapes, and
so you're really just exploring a lot too, trying to figure out what it is. It's like allowing the sculpt to breathe and kind of come to life on its own, using shapes and silhouette.
Oh, come on. Oh, I think it's frozen. Oh no, there it is. Yeah. So yeah, I enjoy the sculpting side of things and in exploration of characters through just working with the clay. I find I try to make it. I try to envision it as a ball of clay, a real ball of clay, because a lot of people who sculpt will say that when they start working in ZBrush, like original art, like real artists who use clay and stuff like that, they will say, oh, it's just like working with a ball of clay and stuff like that. So yeah, I just start to mess around with it a lot and see what I can come out with. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. And I haven't spent like ages getting topology correct and all that. I've just, used a very basic, and I'm not even dynameshed it yet. I haven't like re-dynameshed it yet. I'm just playing around, making shapes.
Yeah. The exploration is really, really cool. We had a good question come in with the flying spaceship through the canyon for the Atom project.
Yes.
Do you worry about scale? Did you, as you were going through like with ZBrush and trying to figure out the exact size?
Yeah, so actually it's a one-to-one scale of a real environment, so it's massive. We had to cut the environment up into multiple sections just so we could get it into ZBrush, and it was a team of 4 people, about 4 people sculpting rocks, and I had one of the hero shots is when they fly down the corridor, and then the hero spaceship takes a quick turn right, and then the bad guy spaceship takes a quick turn left, and that section was a hero shot, and I managed to bag that one, or they gave it to me even. So yeah, it was a massive task. I mean,
nice.
It was late nights as well to get it done. Sometimes I'd work sometimes I would work in the evenings and work on the weekends as well, just to make sure the project was completed for the next week or whatever, for the client. Sorry, but yeah, it was good. It was a good project.
Nice, man. Nice, very nice. Yeah, the questions are flying in, which is really, really cool. As we all know, there are definitely different modeling applications to do our job as artists. We have tons of tools, ZBrush being obviously one of your favorite. Why is ZBrush one of your favorite tools? And is there like a feature or a feeling about ZBrush that really makes this program stand out?
I don't know. I think it's because I've worked on it so long. It's just become second nature, It's like it's when here's a good case. I can't draw very well. I'm not the best drawing artist. So when I see someone who can draw really well, I'm like, wow, how can you just do that? And they keep saying, oh, I just keep drawing every day. I just draw every day, and you eventually, you become better at it. And that's kind of the same thing for me. I just sculpt. I try to sculpt every day, and I, hopefully get better. That's the only way you can do it. The pandemic really did help with the learning side of things as well, like the dedication to learning and all that sort of thing, because there was nothing you could do apart from, because you can go out, so you were stuck indoors. So that's sort of, yeah, which wasn't great, but yeah. So it's just a matter of if you really want to learn it and you really want to get good at it, you need to put the time in. When everyone else is outside playing or going out and enjoying the nights and stuff like that, or the weekends, you need to be, if you want to, you need to be sitting in front of your computer and using that time to hone your skills, basically. Yeah, it's just.
No, very cool. Do you? I've noticed that you have done this before, but we have like a question. Do you sculpt characters in T pose or A pose? Do you have a preference of how you sculpt?
For a lot of my time-lapse videos, I do prefer to do it in T pose, because I also sell, or I'm at the moment trying to sell those models online, so that people who find it difficult to sculpt the models that they want to, and they try they try their hardest and they can't get past that section. If they wanted to take a break from it and learn to retopo and texture and create game characters with a model that's already there for them to use, then they're able to do it. So that's why I pose it in a T pose and A pose, because it's going to be helpful for people later. If I posed it and I sculpted it in a pose, then it's kind of worthless because you can't use it.
Yeah, otherwise. a lot of back end work to get it back.
Yeah, it's much easier to T pose it, sculpt it, then transpose it and change the look of it, the pose of it. And then you can even go further, add a layer, and then sculpt the muscle tone to the correct shapes and stuff like that. But you'll always have something to go back to if you wanted to make that character into a game character or a film character or anything like that. So yeah, he's always keeping the model live. Basically, you don't want to have something you can't use. But otherwise, it's, unless you're gonna print it, then by all means. So at a certain point, I start to mess around with the resolution. So I bump it up ever so slightly, Dynamesh it. Usually I take the blur off because I actually like the way ZBrush gives you this detail when you're sculpting. It's like a rough sort of texture to it, and not everything.
Challenge.
Yeah,
don't use smooth.
Exactly.
Don't smooth it. Just sculpt on it. Take away and add, but don't smooth.
And it's actually very difficult to not use smooth. The best way I see doing it is to use the minus rather than the plus to smooth. So you sculpt, and then you just etch away at it a bit, and then you sculpt some more, and then you etch away at it a bit. That's the best method for smoothing. I mean, once you get to the stage where you're happy with how the sculpt looks, then you can use smooth and go in and smooth. I mean, like there's trouble areas in here. So what I would do is actually use the inflation tool, inflate it, and then I would just Dynamesh it again so that it smooths out, and then I'll just smooth those areas a little bit, do it again until it's cleaned. And that's the only reason I would use smooth at this stage, would be to clean the model. You don't want to use it otherwise, because then what I see with a lot of people is they use smooth quite a bit, and then they lose all that detail, all that sort of accidental detail that they would have picked up if they just kept sculpting, basically. So yeah, I mean, at this stage I would maybe pop in an eyeball, just so I can have something as a reference for an eyeball. So,
Oh yeah.
just yeah, doesn't matter too much because the size of it at the moment, because I'm going to just mirror this over quick. Merge as one. Come on. There we go.
Mhm.
So it doesn't matter too much the size of it because I duplicate that, and on this one I make sure symmetry is on, and I make sure the local symmetry is turned on as well, and I just shrink them a bit, and then I'll go back to the second one, use the clay buildup, make sure symmetry is on, and then I dig away and I may immediately get eyelids. So
There you go. That's
there
cool.
you go. And it doesn't matter if they look weird right now because you can always just shrink them down again.
Yeah. No, that's
So,
super awesome.
so yeah, I mean, this is just a very quick bust, obviously. Is there
No, but
any?
it's cool because you know what's neat too is you're not even caring about really the topology at all. You're just sketching, and this is what I find to be super powerful about ZBrush is just the ability to sketch, get in there, do a bunch of just moving stuff around, and find something that you like. No, it's really cool. Any advice for any anatomy improvements on your side, and also any advice for people who are getting into or want to start creature sculpting, what they should practice, or you know, how should they start as a beginner?
Well, the simple answer to that is for both questions is you need to know the basics of anatomy, and the basis of anatomy. When I say that, you don't need to know every single finger bone or muscle in the body. If you study how muscles look on the body, and you study images, and you study, you know, what do you call them, cadavers and stuff like that, and you see the sort of muscle strands. I mean, when you sculpt, it's best not to paint. If you had let's say we wanted to make the lateral muscle. What do they call these things? I can't remember what they're called now. the muscles on the neck.
Oh, the trapezius.
That's the one. If you want,
I'm terrible with muscle names. I have to think about that.
Yeah. So if you wanted to sculpt muscle, it's best not to sculpt muscle going down. Oops. Let me just change the brush. Going down it like this and building it up like that. That's no way to sculpt muscle. When you sculpt muscle, the best way to sculpt muscle is to sculpt muscle along its the way this along its face rather than down the face. It just builds up nicer and it leaves a sort of a better result as well. So when I sculpt, when I draw, I see this as drawing more than sculpting. When I draw like really quickly down the muscle, down the cheekbone like that, down the forehead. I don't ever sort of use straight lines. I'm always going up and down rather than straight across. It's a lot better. I mean, if the ZBrush was working properly, it would be even easier to show you. But yeah, so learn anatomy. First thing you should probably learn is male and female. Get yourselves one of those little statues that you can get of a half a male skin on, half a male skin off, and you can see all the muscles on one side, and you can see how the skin looks like on the other side. Try not to sculpt the whole thing at once. Sculpt parts. So sculpt an arm. Once you're happy with how you can sculpt arms, then go on to leg, then the torso, then the head. The head's always going to be difficult because likeness is very difficult to do. So that's why creature sculpting is so much more fun, because you don't have to have too much of a likeness. So that's another reason why I love doing creature sculpts.
Do you want to know a trick?
Yeah.
A little secret. Hit the comma key to bring up the lightbox. And then go to Tool. And then down at the bottom row, all the way to the right, Brian, yep, just double click that. That's your built-in écrochet. It's a female écrochet, but all of the tools are named with the appropriate muscle.
Oh.
And it's shipped with ZBrush. So if anybody's trying to learn, names or figure something out, this is a good starting spot.
Yeah, this definitely will help because you can just, like you say, you can just come in here and see how that muscle works and in here as well, and how they attach to each other and attach to limbs and stuff. It's very, very good, actually. And the hardest part is in this area. I always find that this area around here is one of the hardest parts to sculpt.
Oh yeah, but it's there. So
yeah, there you go. And it's also got a skeleton. So if you wanted just to have a skeleton,
very nice.
You can use that as a reference to build the muscle on top and see if you can achieve the same look as the other model.
It's a new ZBrush challenge.
Yeah. So I mean, this is this unfortunately, because of the ZBrush mess up of this pen tablet, this would actually look a little bit more defined if I was sculpting it at the moment. But because the sensitivity is just like completely not here, it's like it does make it harder to sculpt on the model. But essentially what I'll do then after this is when I get to a certain point where Dynamesh just won't work for me anymore, and I'm not going to go higher than 1 million polygons with Dynamesh. That's just silly. You're going to start, your computer's going to start screaming at you, what are you doing, sort of thing. So when I get to a good stage where I like what I'm looking at and I like what I see, I will actually duplicate this model. So I'll just duplicate them, turn off these parts. And for my YouTube videos, I kind of cut this part out because it's kind of boring. But essentially what I do is I come into geometry, turn off Dynamesh, go to ZRemesh. Normally, I just put this down to 10 or 20 with a big full character, but about 5-10 for a bust. So I'll just put 10. And ZBrush has actually come a long way with ZRemesh. It used to be really difficult to get a good topology out of ZRemesh, but now it's gotten really good at figuring out what the shape is and how to go around and make the quads and stuff like that. So really pleased with that piece of technology from ZBrush. And sometimes you can get quite a good result, and you can use it for let's say you're working in a company that needs a games company that needs a model really quickly so that the animators can rig it and animate it whilst you work on the model. If you can get a good ZRemesh done of the model that you're supposed to make, give it over and tell them this is just a test, they can use that because you don't have to worry about retopoing and then fixing everything. They can use that as whilst you carry on sculpting, basically. So it's really, really good. The next thing I would do after that is get all that detail. So let's just imagine that this character has all this details, lovely detail on it. I would then start to project. Now, there's 2 ways you can project, I think. There's one way I do it is I go up a level incrementally and project. Other people will go straight to level 6, 12 million polygons and project from there. I found in the past ZBrush made it was a bit dangerous to do that because ZBrush would just crash or your model would just go explode. So my approach is to use the projection tool 1 level at a time, wait for it to project, Control D to subdivide it, project again, Control D, project again.
So you're doing the older way technique, which is still a very effective technique for sure. Yeah, we've made a lot of improvements over the years to actually have it now so that you can use with either project history or project all. You can go up a little bit. You can go up a couple levels. I actually recommend going up like 2 levels, project it, go up another 2 levels, and then you should be usually pretty good at that point. But I've been one of the ones who've braved it. All right, subdivide 6, project, and it gets really, really good results. So we've improved it a lot, and we're always trying to figure out how to improve that, just to even make it that much better. Yeah,
and then let's say I've got to my point where I'm happy. I'll turn that off, and now we have let's just imagine that you got all this lovely detail on it. I can then delete the Dynamesh because I don't need it anymore. like that. Oh, 1 second. And now I have a model with topology, and I can even plug in make a UV maps for it if I wanted to take into Substance Painter as a concept and do it that way, because you can do it that way. And a lot of people have asked me to do it that way, but I'm stuck in my ways at the moment, and I quite enjoy doing the Photoshop side of things as well. Like, it's different sort of medium to play with. So
Don't worry, I'll
yeah,
pick some of those habits for you. Don't worry. We'll get you subdividing all the way up, projecting one time, and then we'll get you bashing everything out. You'll be good.
Oh dear. Hope so. And then I have a huge library of alphas that I have collected over the years. So if I go to my alphas in here, I have tons of alphas that I've just collected from the online. I bought some as well. As you can see in here, I've got loads of alphas in here. I can just use one of these maybe just to show you. So some of these alphas, I don't know where I found this technique, but I noticed I found it online where someone mentioned going into modify and turning surface on, and that finds the middle ground of that alpha, the mid gray value of that alpha, and it actually helps the alpha work a little better. You don't get that lift, continuous lift from the model. It just sort of places the stamp on the model, sort of thing. And then I'll just go around and I'll just add, some alphas here and there. Come in with a damn standard. Oops. And then this is another thing. I love to carve with the damn standard, so I will just do really quick carving techniques in here to get wrinkles and stuff like that. And I'm again not too precious with what I have. It's not a case of being precious with the concept, especially if you're on a tight deadline. The final concepts are more important, but for something that's going to be shown as a draft, it's not too important to have perfection, because you can take this as Photoshop and just paint over it anyway. So yeah. And
when you use ZRemesher to, let's say, like you want to do a ZRemesh, you were talking about sending that over to the animation team for test rigging. Is there a certain target of poly counts that you try to aim for?
Yeah, so for games, it's a lot different to film. Depending on the game studio you're in. If you're working in a League of Legends, you're probably not going to get away with actually using ZRemesher, because ZRemesher just can't handle that very low topology count to because with like Good Game Studios, we were on a, what was it? It was a 1,000 polygons per character, and that included all the costume, weaponry, and everything. So it was 1,000 polygons per character.
That's pretty
when
low.
when you're getting to that sort of low figure, you start using triangles, because it doesn't really matter too much in games design to use triangles, but in film it's a lot different. You're the best thing to use is quads for film. For film, again, film is different. It's a completely different animal. You can have millions of polygons. I think on one of the creatures we did, there was like 6 million polygons on this thing, and it was just like a very low res version of it. I mean, that was the lowest LOD that they had. So it went further up. But like Godzilla, I think Godzilla was a 32 million polygon count or something like that.
Godzilla was broken up into like 5 different pieces. It's like his arms were sculpted. Like one character got an arm, one guy got a leg, one guy got the tail.
But if you compare that, it's like Gollum. When you compare Gollum in Lord of the Rings to Gollum in Hobbit, Gollum in Lord of the Rings was like low. It was 20,000, something like that, polygons, and then in the Hobbit it was like in the millions. It's crazy. So that's how far we've come in such a short time. But for AAA games, ZRemesh is pretty good, because it's kind of a in between League of Legends and film. It's got a lot more polygon count you can work with. But again, there will be a specific number that the art director will give you in games to create. And in games, you will do everything. You will go from modeling to retopoing, texturing. Sometimes you'll even rig it for the riggers, for the animators and stuff. So you're doing a lot of different skills. Whereas in film, if you are in creature and your creature department, or if you are in groom or something like that, you get specific jobs to do. Unfortunately, I'm a build artist, so I get more jobs to do. But it's not a bad thing. Yeah, I'm just one of those people they throw around, oh, we need you on that show, we need you on that show. That's fine.
Mark is going to do it.
Yeah, he can do it. We've seen him do it.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah.
All right, we have quite a few questions actually. We have a lot of rendering questions. So for everybody who's asked a rendering question, I have saved those. I have them because we're going to be getting into rendering soon. Mark has promised. He promised. So we're going to hold him to it. But we had a couple of questions coming in. When you're approaching sculpting fur, like with your wolf, what's a good tip, or how do you approach it so that you get kind of what you're looking for?
So with the wolf, this is kind of a gangly wolf, but with the wolf, it's a good idea to build the basic shape of it first and imagine it without fur. So you're building a dog without fur. Have you ever seen a dog without fur? It's really actually quite thin and gangly. It's, some of them. So think that way. Build the muscle strand, get the muscles in, get the bones in the right place, get the everything created in the first stage. Then the second stage of that would be to add fat to your muscle, to your character. Adding that sort of heaviness to the character also gives it a bit of life. It grounds it in reality. Because I've seen a lot of people whose work, the character has massive muscles, but they are out here and they're floating. Yeah. And when you have a character like, I think if you go to my art station, I think there's an Arnold Schwarzenegger that I've sculpted in there.
Let me go ahead and pull that art station up.
Yeah.
Let me load it real fast.
But essentially, what you want to do is you want to think in terms. If you're making a human character, a bodybuilder, they're not huge. They're not like the Hulk who can hold. I mean, even the Hulk has got weight on him. He's holding that weight. The bones are in a position that is holding weight down. So in terms of adding fat, you need to make sure that it's got a bit of gravity when you're sculpting. It looks like it's heavy on the character. Once you've done that, then you can. What I did for the wolf, I added an extra layer where I would build up fur, right? So using the clay brush, clay 2 brush on a soft brush, I would just add like a mounds on the model. And then I would then use a VDM brush, which is the fur brush on this character, to get the fur looking like this. So underneath the fur on this character is just a big ball of clay that's surrounding the parts where I wanted the fur to build up.
Nice.
And that's how I would sculpt fur. Add volume, then add detail. Don't jump straight to detail. A lot of people have a habit of just jumping straight into detail, the detailing section. And I know it's what you want to do with your character. You want to just get into those little nitty-gritty details. But I always say to people in my tutorials and stuff that I have, you need to stay away from it. You need to pull yourself away from your model. You need to look around it constantly and rotate and constantly look around. If it takes you a month to get that character to look good at a first stage, then let it be a month. Don't let it be 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Once you get used to it, then it gets quicker and you get to work on it fast. And you get, you're faster at working with it. But for the first stages, it's best to take your time. And that detail stage, I always say that detail stage is only 10% of the final piece. The 90% of the other stuff is just making sure the model works, making sure it looks good, with basic sort of principles in it.
Yep.
So yeah, that's how I would tackle fur, I guess. The same thing with like hoods and stuff. If you have like a
Yeah.
Viking with a hood and it's got like a bear fur on his shoulders and stuff, I would build that up with a cylinder and then use a
Yeah.
VDM brush to add fur on top. I'm not sure if I can do it with this mouse being so rubbish, but let me see quick. So let's say this cylinder is a hood. I'm just going to make my brush. Oh god. Trying to mesh this. Actually, I don't need a dynamic. Oh, I do need a dynamic. Or do I? No, I don't. I'm fine. I'll just I'll just leave it as is. So if I go into the brush menu and I go and load that brush that I was working with, so if I come in here, alphas, I think it's alphas, brushes, sorry. So I've got these ones called Fur, Fur M, Fur S, VDM brushes basically, and each one's a different sort of density, size and scale and stuff like that. So if I just load that in, you can see it's got a little bit of a shape on it.
Yeah.
And so if this, say this little head here was sitting right here, you want to build that shape first, so you have a base to play with, and then go in with a VDM brush and add the fur on top of it. You see?
Yeah.
So and then you also vary it up, obviously, and eventually it will just build up like fur. Fur does. If
the body and
if you follow the curvature of the hood, you'll eventually get something that looks like a furry hood, basically. A lot of it's actually, this technique was I found was very common with miniatures, miniature sculpting. They would get a block of green clay, and then they would make a cylinder, and then they would put that around the character's shoulders, and then they would carve away at it to make that look like strands of fur. It's exactly the same thing. You're just doing the exact same thing with this basically. So you would just add in, and I mean you'll have to clean it up obviously, but it does help that you have these sort of VDM brushes, and you can buy these VDM brushes and test them for yourself, and it does speed up the process for certain things and stuff like that. So yeah.
Very cool. Well, thanks for showing it. That's really awesome. Do you use poly paint in your professional day-to-day job that they use later for, like, when you're over at the DNEG?
DNEG, haven't had the occasion yet to use poly paint, unfortunately. We don't really have a massive creature department, but if you were in the creature department, you could use poly paint to create a base color for your character, because in Mari uses a palette system, or a canvas system, sorry. So you project in Mari rather than paint, like Substance Painter. So if I was to create this for a film, I would add color, like I have added color here. I tend to paint my characters when I'm doing my Photoshop stuff. I do it very quickly and just use very, very easy brushes, like a standard brush with a color spray, and the Alpha number 7 is normally my go-to for coloring. Anything really, and then I'll just color pick, and then I'll just paint. And because that color spray, it also gives a bit of pigmentation between the colors as well, so it gives a bit of variation. But you have to, you have to have the correct colors, work with the correct colors. But you could retopo, you could UV map this, take this texture into Substance as a base texture to start with, and then add on top of it. But I have found that it's just easier in Substance, because I've got a whole different sort of way of working in Substance to create textures from the ground up, and it's a lot quicker for me to do it that way, and a lot safer because you know, if the guy says, if the art director says, oh, that's cool, but can we change it to orange, you know, or something like that, then in Substance I could just pull a slider around and the whole thing's changed color, sort of thing. So it's finding the quickest means to creating art, and also non-destructible. You want non-destructible. You can use this, but again,
I'm going to blow your mind.
Color.
I'm going to blow your mind here for a second.
Yep.
We have adjust colors in Polypaint. If you want to change this real quick, if you want to see it. Yeah. So if you go on the right hand side, and go down to Polypaint.
Oh.
Just like you would. Yeah, scroll down, Polypaint. Boop 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 boop, and then we have a adjust colors. It's a button. Just click that.
Oh wow.
And there you go, man. Adjust away.
I think I just found something cool.
So there you go.
Oh wow.
So
this thing is full of surprises, you know. The ZBrush,
don't worry.
Full of surprises.
We could be here all day. There you go. There you go.
Giving a bit more pink. That's brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, you know, but at the end of the day, too, it's a pipeline thing. Every studio does things differently. I've worked in a lot of different programs, too. And again, depending on what your career is, you know, where does ZBrush fit into that? That's really a good point for a lot of artists to ask themselves. When I got into toys, ZBrush was the only thing I needed. But then I also did some animation stuff for other companies. And, you know, that's when it's like, okay, well, that's when I learned Substance. That's when I learned a little bit of Marvelous Designer and stuff. You know, so all these programs are there for everybody. But the thing is that with ZBrush, we're always trying to figure out a way to, like, you know, how is it easy for the artist to get their job done so they don't have to bounce back and forth? Because that's kind of a pain too, when you have like 5 different programs and you're constantly sending it back and forth, back and forth. So we're always trying to figure out how can we keep you in here so that you don't have to worry about that. And that was one of them. I was like, well, we can adjust colors.
Yeah, I think that's great actually, because you know, sometimes, definitely working on this character, I couldn't get the colors to the exact same as I had before, so I had to keep recoloring it because I had to resculpt it a lot of times, and I had to change the colors and stuff. So that's actually a really cool tip, actually, to adjust the colors within here. So that's not
no problem. That's what I'm here for.
Because you know, you're an artist, and I mean, you have certain things that you use all the time, and then you have things that you probably never use in ZBrush, depending on what line of work you go down inside of ZBrush, because there's a lot of different lines of work you can go down. You can go in hard surface. You can even do, comic book like types, renderings and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yep. It's all very. It's such a wide variety of things you can use ZBrush for, and that's why I like to have ZBrush rather than. I don't dislike Blender, but I don't think that Blender could, you know, is going to be as good as ZBrush is for artists in the industry. Well, I know there's a lot of rivalry between them, so you know.
No, man. At the end of the day, a tool is a tool, and you know, we're the industry standard that leads for sculpting, and we're always trying to make that experience so much better. You know, so at the end of the day, it's like, you know, we want every user of ZBrush to know that we have them in mind, and that we're trying to keep them in their pipelines as the focal point as the program evolves and builds, you know, because not everything can stay the same, you know, things change over time, but is the experience worth it? Can you get most of your work done? If that's the case, we've done our job. So
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So we still have quite a bit of questions on rendering, and right now we've been going for about an hour and a half.
Right.
So would like to shift our focus over. I know everybody's so eager, so I'll just give you kind of a recap. So you know, it's like they were curious about image resolution size, why you export things out a certain way. So I'm just going to let you have it, go over your render process, and then anything that we don't touch on in the questions, I'll ask those afterwards.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, if everyone has seen, if a lot of people have seen my processes inside of YouTube, time lapse wise, it is cut up quite a bit, and I have got YouTube tutorials, free tutorials. You can go and watch, and it covers this like I must have covered it at least 4 times on how I render and how I set things up. But I will do it again because you guys have asked quite nicely. So the first thing I do is once I've got my colors down and I've got my model posed and I'm ready to take it into rendering stage, first thing I do obviously is add the render tab over here and the light tab over here as well. Now, I like to play with the light first. I always pick a light, use one light as much as possible. I don't like to use overly use many lights. My settings at the moment is set to 90. I hover around 160 for the distance of the light. So let's say this is the light source that I want. I want it sort of pointing down, and I want to see how the shadows work with that. Let's see. So in the shadows section, I don't touch much inside the shadows section for a reason. I don't want to crash ZBrush if it crashes, because there's sometimes ZBrush will just go down once you start playing around with the figures over here and your computer is not good enough. So try to keep it to a very minimum, raise down to a very low, and play with it that way. I also don't touch the render property. I'll go into render properties in a minute, but I'll first render out a shadow pass and I'll show you how it looks. I always tend to put the angle about 30, the blur set to 2, or you can set it further up or further down. I think that's that preference, the AO.
The preview AO, go under render. And then it's towards the bottom, 4th from the bottom. It's preview AO. Yeah, you can turn that off.
Yeah, cool.
There you go.
So just render that again. And then what I'll do is I'll spend quite a bit of time trying to get that shadow just right so that it's in the correct place, and it's the main focus is the face and the top half and stuff like that. So I don't want too much shadow. I don't want too little shadow. So this would be fine for what I want. Once I've found out, oh, that's a good shadow, I will then turn the occlusion on. So I'll go into the render properties, coming down to occlusion. Now the details, I just leave until 3. I'll just leave it at 3 levels for now until I do the final render, because again, depending on your machine, you might not be able to take it or handle it. In the BPR AO, I leave the raise at 20, but I put the resolution up to around 4000. And I'll set the blur down to 1. And the Z depth, I believe the Z depth is it's 1. Yeah, that's typically my ambient occlusion settings. And then I'll just render it again with the shadows on as well.
Nice. Do you ever save out any of these presets?
No, I work so quickly that I just, it just comes naturally. I mean, I do have filters saved out,
Nice.
just for like turntables and stuff, for like gray models and stuff like that. But I feel that if you work from scratch, then you don't miss a beat. And if you have pre-made filters and stuff, it takes longer to sort through them and see which ones you want to turn off, turn on, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I prefer just to get it out as fast as possible out of ZBrush and get it into Photoshop. So this is what it looks like, and then I'll just check with a little preview of how the shadows are working and how the ambient occlusion is working. And then I'm very old school. I export these out one at a time. I know there's a button you can press to go into Photoshop, but for me, it's all about for me, it's just how I tend to go about doing things. So I'll tend to click on this and render it out, save it out. Sorry. So if I go to here, and I just make a new one. Oh, there's a vector already. I'll just put it in here. So I'll render this out, and then I'll put this to Photoshop. Again, I will put it into level 4, but I'm very wary of doing it because it might just crash, and I don't want it to crash on the live stream. So because it's just an old machine I'm working on. So normally I'll put it to detail number 4, The document itself, it's normally I turn the Pro off and I set this to 1920. I'm always roughly in 1920 by 1080. I don't know why I stick to that. I normally stick to that. So if I resize this, hit yes, Control End, clear it, bring it back in, zoom out as far as so I can see the canvas around the edge. Then I will, put this there, and then I'll render it out again. Let it do its thing and then export it. Well, we're going to do that again, so I'll just cancel this render. So once I've got these first ones render passes, all these first render passes exported out, then I go back into the render properties, turn off the occlusion and shadow, and then I'll go into materials, and this is where it gets hectic because I went to ZBrush Central ages ago, and I downloaded all the matte caps that they created for free, which you can download for free on the ZBrush Central website, or you can download it for free on my ArtStation because I've put it in the art store just to people to download for free.
Nice. I'll point them to the resource center.
Yeah.
The matte caps. There's quite a lot actually, which is really cool. There's also textures, alphas, and such in there. So
yeah,
definitely.
I mean all the alphas I have, most of the alphas are from there anyway. So it's like go crazy, but yeah, go crazy and download them if you want. So I got a variety of different materials, matte cap materials and stuff, which does really well inside of Photoshop with the different passes and stuff like that. But the first one I always do is a flat color. This gives me a flat color of my character, and it's a lot easier when we turn off the shadow and ambient occlusion. And this will be like I'll show you inside of Photoshop later, maybe that pass. But this will give me a flat color, which I can overlay and get back that color detail that I lose when I start playing around with the other materials. I would export that one out as well, and then I would come in here and turn off all these color layers material for the colors, and I would come in here and actually let me just select the body. It's more interesting to look at when we see the preview, and I will come in here, and there's select materials that I use all the time, and then there are some that I just want to try out and play with. So ones that I use all the time would be Matte Cap Skin 4, the skeleton one, the normal map, frame number 1, frame number 4, GW Skin Core, reflective map, and then I would then just start to play around. I always try to keep it at around 10. So if I was to do this, I would select this, Matte Cap Skin 04, render it out, export it out into a separate folder, come back in and do the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, until I've got all the ones I want. Keep it low, keep it about 10, like I said. You don't want to be using, when you're in Photoshop, you don't use all of them anyway. You might use 1 or 2, and then the other ones are just throwaways because you don't need them, but it's good to have a variety. So let's say I've done all the matte caps, so I've got all the matte caps I want. I mean, this one looks really cool because it's kind of like a slimy, shiny of a moon or on a rough surface sort of thing. It's quite nice.
It's like the T-1000 from Terminator 2, just forming. It's like,
yeah. I mean, that one would be something like this.
Oh yeah, there you go.
There you go. And it's also very good to have an idea of how materials work, and that's another thing I find, which with people who have tried my tutorials or try to imitate the time-lapse videos that I create, like the artwork and stuff. Knowledge about how materials work, so how glass looks, how metal looks, and how skin and all these other materials look when using these matte caps or matte cap materials is very important. Like if I had a metal arm, I would add a shiny surface to that and I would mask it out, and then I would paint that on because I know that's metal, and then I
Yeah.
overlay it inside of Photoshop somehow with a different overlay or whatever. If it's a skin is different to horns, so skin is oilier, horns are rougher, so you don't have reflection on the horns, you have it on the skin. Stuff like, little things like that. With material knowledge of materials really helps with the final image. So I've rendered out all these. The next thing to do, we're just going to add some specular highlights, specular lights, and stuff like that. So for that, I tend to use a blend material, and then I'll come back up here to my lights, and I'll just crank this up to roughly 3. And then first thing I do is I render out that one pass where that light was the whole time. So I know that that's the light source that's coming down. That's the reflective light. That's got reflections that I like. And I export that out. Then I tap on the sphere to take it to the back. And then I would render out a rim light. Now you can turn the shadows on, but if you go into Photoshop, you can just mask it out. All the light source that you don't want, you can just mask out with a pen. So it's not too much of a problem. But if you want, you can turn on the shadows. But I find that the rim light disappears because it's adding shadow as well. So you don't get that sort of crisp white outline. And I would just add as many of these little lights as possible, even use distance to change the distance of it so that this really reflects the face, say. Export that out as well. Because you don't have to use all of it. You could just use a little bit of it. You could just use the face part, and you could just rub out the rest of it, sort of thing. And then that's it. That's the rendering process. I mean, it's not terribly difficult to master. I try to not make it too difficult, I guess.
No, that's really straightforward, and like you said, you personally just like to render out each one of your render passes, which is totally fine. I mean,
Sure.
we do have a Photoshop plugin for that, but if this works for you, I mean,
Yeah, I have looked at it, and Yeah, and it does have specific things that you could use in here and materials and stuff. But if you wanted, I just find that I want more specific stuff, so I just use the old method, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. That's really great. And you've answered quite a few questions with that too, which was really awesome. I too work in 1920 by 1080 for some reason. I just kind of stuck with that. So very, very cool. Let's see here. Just kind of going through the chat and stuff like that. Our current version of ZBrush is 2022.0.6. So we did have a question about an older version of ZBrush.
Right.
However, I would say currently, if you need to use any type or export anything with a transparent background, we do provide a mask render pass for that. It makes it for easy selections and send that out. The important thing to remember is that, ZBrush sees everything as black as being transparent. So that one right there, that will get you what you're looking for. But yeah. Well, everybody seems to be having a really good time and loving your process. So really appreciate you coming on here and showcasing that. If anybody has any final questions for Marcus before we start wrapping up a little bit, or if there's anything else you would like to share, Case. But we did get a question that I wanted to ask you. People are interested in how they can get their first job as a character artist. Is there like a portfolio tip or any advice you can give them to start that journey?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've actually done a couple of. I've been a judge on a couple of these game studio. I think it was a gamer. What was it called? Sorry, I was a judge twice in a row. 2 times for it. It's like a star game. I can't remember what it was called. It was for students to show us their portfolios and showcase their portfolios to us, and we would give them feedback. Mm-hmm. And the majority of the feedback that I would give to students who want to find a place in a studio or their first job was to show your skills. Don't try to create something to final. That's probably the most important thing I can think of for someone who's just coming out of or wants to get into it. Don't show final things, because that could take a long time. And whilst you're doing that very long project, you could be learning basic skills as well as working on skills. And if you have, I would prefer to see a portfolio jam-packed full of half-made models or creatures and stuff like that, so I can see that you have a passion for it and you want to learn, and you might not think it looks good, but that's your opinion. It could be someone else's opinion that they love it, you know. If you have one or two pieces of one or two really like finalized pieces that are just okay, it's a little harder for me to make a judgment call on whether or not you are qualified enough as an artist to work. If you have one piece that's really good, or one piece that you find really good, but you have, let's say, 30 pieces of half done stuff, that is more interesting, because I know that you are trying to learn. You can finish a model but you have unfinished pieces, which if you have a passion to finish them, and you say that you have a passion to finish them, then great. I would love to see, see that sort of stuff. Skills come later. I didn't know how to do League of Legends painting until I was in the studio and they were showing me at my desk. I didn't know how to use Mari until I was at the desk at NPC and they said, "Here's Mari, here's your lead. He's going to show you how to use it. Use it." That's how you learn a lot on the job. But if you have the basic skills of retopo, the basic skills of substance paint, the layout of projects or programs and stuff. ZBrush, you probably need a lot more skill in ZBrush than you would in all the other ones, because that's your go-to. If you want to be a creature artist, you need to know how to sculpt them. 2D art, unless it's got something to do with a model that you're creating, and you are really good at 2D art, I wouldn't put it in your portfolio. Like, I've seen a lot of people who have drawn anime characters and these like really basic characters and stuff, and it looks nice. Okay, you have some skills in it, but it's not what we're looking for. If you're honing your skills to a certain studio, make sure you do what the studio does. So if you want to work at League of Legends, you do League of Legends stuff. You want to work at, I don't know, in film, you pick up a skill, groom, build, creature design. You choose one of those paths, because you got to be very good at one of them, unless you want to be a generalist. If you want to work at a AAA studio for GTA 5 or something like that, then you got to make loads of digi-doubles, maybe, show your skills in that sort of area and stuff like that. You want to be a hard surface modeler for mechanical creatures or mechanical robots and stuff, make loads of robots, fill your ArtStation account. I mean, I don't even look at portfolios. I look at ArtStation. This is my portfolio. That's the portfolio you look at nowadays. Even industry people who are art directors who are trying to find an artist, they will go straight to ArtStation. Yeah. Straight away, and see what you do, what sort of work you have. So ArtStation is your go-to place for a portfolio. I don't even have a website. I have a website, but I don't even use it anymore. I just use ArtStation and YouTube for my portfolio.
Yeah, here's the ArtStation link again for anyone who's looking or interested in seeing his work. There. Very cool. Very cool. For your book covers, your final resolution, like when you send the client for printing and stuff, what do you usually fall within?
Well, for the both covers, I actually made the canvas in ZBrush exactly the same size as the book cover was going to be, and then I used Photoshop. I used the exact same size, so that when I was trying to pose the model inside of ZBrush to make it fit the model, the canvas inside of Photoshop, it was very easy, because all I had to do was come over here and use a see-through, and I could pose it in the background. Say, let me try that actually.
And what would you say it would be, like 3,000 by 1,500?
Oh yeah, it's huge.
It's huge.
It's quite big. It all depends on the specifics that the studio the book company, publishing company gives you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's how I would pose it, and
There
then
you
I
go.
would save this document, save this render. So I'd turn this off, come over here. I do it the old-fashioned way. I don't use the camera thing at the top. I do the old-fashioned way. I just come in here, hit cluster 1, and now I can always go back to that viewpoint.
There you go. There
And
are a
yeah,
few ways, so that's
yeah,
a great way.
yeah. And then you can also save that view out
Yep.
for later, so you can save the views, and it will always be there. You can even lock the camera
Yep.
as well if you wanted to. But yeah, with books, it varies from book to book. Whatever they give you size-wise, that's what you work to.
Nice.
When you're sculpting, you don't have to work to that size. It's only when you're rendering, then you boost everything up to the size that they ask for, and you render at that resolution. Otherwise, you take it from ZBrush if you're working at 1920 by 1080, but they want 3000 by 4000 or whatever.
Yeah.
You take that into Photoshop and you scale it up. It's going to be pixelated. It's going to look wrong. So it's best to work to the size of the canvas that you are asked to work to when rendering. Just make sure you've got a pretty good computer to do it, really.
Yeah. The higher you go on that resolution, the higher it's going to toll on your computer. Because again, ZBrush is a lot of CPU driven, so it'll take a toll. So I only adjust the resolution when I'm finally sending it on over and getting my final renders. But I typically sculpt at like 1920 by 1080. It's a comfortable resolution, and things are nice and crisp usually.
Sure.
Had a question come in. I'm going to answer it real quick because it's actually more of a statement. Kimmy had said about can't use background images as ZBrush. You actually can. You can actually import background images using a plane and then apply an image as a texture, or you can even bring in an HDR through under the lights, go under background, go into texture, load an HDR, and then you can load it in that way. So there are quite a lot of like background just above light cap.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So right there, you can load in an HDR as a texture, and then that will bring in. You can even light capture that way. So there are quite a ways to do that for sure. Do you have a favorite sculpt? One of your that you've done that you're like super passionate about?
There's so many actually. Let me just have a look quick on my portfolio. I've got so many. I think Spawn, the one I did for Spawn, I think that just came out just right. Like the bust for that one just came out right. I think it was just a happy coincidence that one came out good. Just bring this over here quick. So that one. That's my favorite one. It just all worked really nicely.
Nice. That's really cool. I like that piece a lot.
And that was a couple of hours. It wasn't even long. The sculpting time was quite short. So yeah, you don't have to have. Yes, how much long was this? It was 3 hours. 3 hour sculpt. Yeah.
Nice. It's fun.
Yeah, that was my favorite one so far. I mean, I want to do a full body one of him at some point, but it's like so much work to do. And I've got a new tutorial I'm working on at the moment. I'm working on a what do you call it? I just put it away. 1 second, I'll just get it back up. So at the moment, I'll just go back. I am working on a new tutorial for, where is he? Squig. Where's the squig gone? Here he is. So I'm working on a tutorial at the moment to make this a game-ready asset.
Nice.
So I'll be using this old model that I have, and I'll be retopoing, and I'm going to take you through Substance Painter and Maya and stuff like that to make textures for them and stuff like that. It's still in the works, but I am working on a new tutorial because people have been asking me for a character, full character from to the end, not just a concept. So that will be a new tutorial that will be coming out soon, hopefully, once I get back to it.
Very nice, very nice. Well, thank you again, Marcus, for being here. We really appreciate you having you come on and showcase your process and stuff like that. Let's see here, quick. Last question. When you do book covers and stuff like that, is there like a way you cover charge? Like, how do you do you have any advice on how to kind of figure out how to charge for your work?
Yeah. So these two book covers, because because I guess I was a new artist towards them, and they are a publishing house. They set the price for the book covers. So you could probably negotiate with it, but if they approach you, they probably have a price in mind, and you have to be careful because you could lose a client if you push too hard for a certain price and stuff like that. You'll tend to find that when you first start off, they're going to be wanting you to do outrageous things for small amounts of money, and when they start asking you to do that, you just say no, because it's not. If you're working on it for 6 months and they give you £500 for it, say, it's not worth your time, unless they're willing to change their minds on the price of it. Then it's not worth your time. And also, make sure to get contracts. A lot of people have been swindled out of getting paid for work. I mean, I've had that. I've had people who haven't paid me for the work that I've done for them, and it's the worst feeling ever because you just wasted so much time on a project. So get a contract, get an invoice. If you can, get paid half up front, half later, or at the end. That's definitely a better way, because that makes them involved, gets them to keep you involved, because they have, they want a product and you've already got half paid. So it's more incentive for them to keep you.
Nice.
But yeah, also do your research on the companies. Sometime on these, especially on like freelance gigs, they can be very difficult to know who is real and who is not real, and who is gonna give you, who's not going to use you. Basically, artists are always getting used these days from freelancers. Like, they want you to do, like I said, they want you to do outrageous things. Like, I had one where some guy came up to me and asked me to make a video for a what do you call it? A theatrical play about like a Disney type thing, but it had to zoom in on things, and then it had to zoom into a castle, and then it had to zoom out of a castle back to a forest, and one person doing all that is just crazy. That's a studio job, Yeah. And then he said, "Oh, I'll pay you pennies for all this," and I was just like, "Nah, I'm sorry, that's ridiculous." Because you got to understand, these people who are asking for work to be done have no idea what sort of work, what sort of blood, sweat, and tears goes into actually creating the stuff for them. They are pretty simple when it comes to the actual art side of things. They don't know, what you go through, or what it takes to make something. Like, I have had people who've asked me to make a dragon, and then they want me to rig it and then paint it and texture it to a film standard, and within a week. And I'm like, no, sorry, that's just no. Sometimes you gotta say no.
Yeah, it's okay to say no. Absolutely. Yep. No, very, very cool. We had a couple more questions come in, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for today. One of the questions came in was, how do you know when you're personally done with a sculpt? Like, take this wolf, for example. You were sculpting it, and at some point in time, you were like, yeah, it's done. What is that like for you?
It's hard, because an artist is never done. And
exactly.
It's only the day off, especially when I'm doing those time-lapse videos for YouTube. Sometimes I'll do one in 2 hours and then render it out and get into Photoshop and start painting. And I come back to it the next day, and I'm like, oh God, that looks horrible.
Yeah.
I've got to change it. So I go back and I change it. But for me, when I'm happy with the sculpt is when I know that I've pushed Dynamesh too far.
There you go.
When Dynamesh starts to break up and it starts to not hold the fine detail that I want to add. Then I stop, then I retopo, then I added fine detail. That's when I know, okay, that's as far as I'm going to get with Dynamesh, and that's as far as I'm going to get with a model. I'm just going to go in and start detailing it, make it look pretty. You know, the last 10%, the 90% is done. The 10% is just making it look pretty, and then I'm done. But yeah, that's the typical point when I say, okay, I'm finished now.
There you go. Yeah. I think typically I like to post my work in progresses on Twitter, and as soon as I hit send, all the problems with that sculpt show up, and I'm like, it's like nobody comments. It's just I now see everything wrong with that piece of work.
Exactly. But then you get the diamond in the rough sometimes, the one that just works, and you're just like, that is good.
Exactly. I think I might have missed this question earlier, but going back to the dragon and the wolf pose, did you sculpt them in T pose, or did you kind of finesse and pose as you went?
Yeah, so I typically sculpt in T pose and everything. I think I've gotten pretty good at posing characters. I mean, I don't over drastically pose my characters when I do, because I like to see them as a concept, and you want to see the model, you know, when you concept, when you're doing paintings and stuff, and they're all in the superhero poses and stuff like that. That's when you don't see the concept; you just see a nice piece of art. But for me, the concept is everything. So I typically, like I say, I sculpt it in T pose, then I play around with transpose to pose it. If there's some things that need to be cleaned up, I clean it up very quickly, and then that's how I would typically do it. But I always add it to a layer so that I could delete the layer and start again if need be, or if I want to, let's say, retopo it later and I want to come back to that model, I've got a T-pose. So, you know, I've built a library of models that I can give away in T-poses and people can just work with, or I could sit back and take to final stage, which would be like film studio, a film grade version or whatever. But there was a creature that I did that exact thing with, actually. It was this one. So this guy was a concept drawing, then he was a concept sculpt, and then he was a final sort of film ready character. I can't find where the image is now. Maybe it's not in here. Oh, there it is. So I started off with a drawing, then a concept sculpt, like I normally do, and then the final one, which was taken into Substance Painter, painted, correct topology, and all those sort of other things, and rendered using Arnold in Maya, sort of thing. So, you know, you can always go back to a sculpt and finish it. That's what I can say. And if you do that, you've got the concept. You've got the concept. You know what the colors look like. You know what it should look like when it's finished. So it's even better.
So go for it. Yeah. Perfect. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share all of your links that you shared with me with everybody. So if you would like to see any of his tutorials or check out his ArtStation, because he has a lot of stuff on there as well. So definitely feel free to check all that stuff out. Marcus, it was a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and everyone else and just sharing your process. It's so neat to connect with other artists and see exactly how you use ZBrush and how you work on a day-to-day basis. So thank you.
That's absolutely my pleasure. There's one more thing I wanted to share. I have actually got a 3D printer, and I have been trying to 3D print some of my models.
I'll blow you up here.
So this is like a test model of the Explorer I created.
Nice.
And I have other ones as well. I'm trying to make them STL ready so people can download them and they can print them out themselves and have them as miniatures on the, you know, on their cabinets and stuff like that. So
that's more to look after for. So that's awesome. All right, everybody. Well, as you guys know, again, we go live almost every single day here on this channel. So we have tons of artists like Marcus who come on and volunteer their time to showcase how they work. They give tips and tricks. I stream every Wednesday at 10 a.m. to noon Pacific Standard Time. So if you want to see me stream, that's tomorrow. Definitely love it. But Marcus, do you just have a YouTube channel now? Do you have any
I-
plans for streaming in the future?
Yes, I do have plans on streaming in the future once I get a proper studio set up. At the moment, I'm just not ready to do that just yet. As well as I'd love to get my YouTube channel up to 100,000, just so I can say I did it and I made it to that point. That's going to be a little bit of time. But yeah, there is going to be live streams later on, possibly later on next year. So
Cool.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you, everybody. And yeah, we'll see you guys later. Have a good one and enjoy. Happy ZBrushing.
Bye.